Okay, today we're interviewing Marc Skinner of Sarasota, Florida, and the interviewer is Mike McGregor with the Grand Valley State University's Veterans Oral History Project. To begin, Mark, where and when were you born?
Born in Richmond, Indiana, in 1948.
Okay, and did you grow up in Richmond?
I did. Born and raised in Richmond. After graduating high school in 1966, went to Ball State University. I was there for about a year and a half. Had a little too much fun toward my second semester and dropped out and did not get back in time before I got drafted.
Okay, so you had a student deferment and then you lost that when you left.
Yeah.
Just backing up a little bit, what did your folks do? What did your parents do?
My dad was a printer and mom was a beautician.
Okay.
Mother came over from France,
Oh.
married dad, and then I came back. Then they were divorced, and she ran a business out of the garage, downstairs garage of the house.
Okay, was your mother a war bride then, or?
Yes.
Okay, so your father was in the Second World War?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, he was
Okay.
ended up being a lieutenant.
Okay. Any brothers or sisters?
A younger brother and younger sister,
Okay.
2 and 4 years younger.
Okay, so you graduated from high school, and what did you know about Vietnam at the time you graduated from high school? Did you follow the news at all, or?
Had one of our teachers, Brian Clutie, who later became the mayor of Richmond. His brother was a helicopter pilot and was killed in our junior year.
Okay.
That's, about the only thing that we paid attention to back then. A small town newspaper, the Palladium item, and you didn't get a lot of national news. And it wasn't until senior year and then, going into college that you ended up paying more attention to it.
Okay, so you got to college, did you know what your major was going to be? Now, Ball State's in Muncie, Indiana,
Yeah.
right? That would be north of you a
About
little
65 miles northwest.
bit? Okay.
Political science was my major, phys ed minor. And, wasn't sure what I was going to do. The standard answer is I was going to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you just kind of figured it out from there.
Okay, so you had about a year and a half of school,
Mhm.
and then you,
Lived in the dorm for the first semester, which was good, then pledged Sigma Chi fraternity and moved in the fraternity house. And that opened my eyes to a lot of, a whole different world, coming from, Richmond, Indiana. And I'm going, ooh, this is kind of fun.
yeah, okay. Did your grades suffer?
Yeah, I dropped, I dropped from a C plus, to a C minus, and got a couple of teachers I didn't like. I said, let me just go ahead and drop out, hit the restart button on this. It didn't work out very well.
Okay.
That was the thought. Went to work at a Burger King, to make ends meet. And almost like it was in the real world.
Yeah, okay, so, then did you drop out, did you say you're gonna take a little time off of school, and,
Yeah, I had intended to get back into the next semester, but
Okay.
received my draft notice.
so you
Before
lost,
that happened.
you lost your student deferment,
Yep.
and, then you got drafted. Okay, and do you know when you got your draft notice?
No,
Okay.
that's
No,
just kind of blocked out.
You got that letter that said greeting.
It was like, had to be, late January, February.
Mhm.
I mean, and they moved pretty quick.
So you got drafted, and, where did you go for basic training?
Fort Dix, New Jersey.
Essentially to Fort Dix. What was your reaction when you to getting drafted and getting to Fort Dix?
I was just kind of shocked, and then everybody's yelling at you. Go to the soldier. So it was just a whole different experience. Small town. Did not travel much. I had been to France because my mother was French.
Sure.
But other than that, didn't really travel a lot. And all of a sudden, here I am, Fort Dix, and you didn't get off the base or do anything for the first 6 weeks, I think. So they kept you pretty close, and you know.
Was basic training hard for you, or?
No, it wasn't hard. I mean, it was physically challenging, but you know, you quickly got used to that. I mean, I was an athlete, you know, growing up, and you know, not a particularly outstanding one. I just, you know, played a lot of the, you know, sports and games and
You were in
enjoyed it.
shape and that, so physically it wasn't that bad.
No,
How about mentally and discipline-wise?
That was the tough part. That was the tough part. You know, Sergeant Simpson, big old black Sergeant Simpson, just a yelling and screaming. He had a DI hat just cocked off to the side, and he just prances around, and he kept you moving. So
Now, what was the makeup of your platoon? Were they all draftees?
no, it was a wide range. It didn't appear that there was any particular formula that they had, you know, that they had found. We had, you know, some firemen that, you know, he didn't marry his girlfriend yet, but had, you know, a kid. You know, so everybody had, you know, had a little different story.
Okay.
You know, and we had, you know,
Oh, where were they from? Do you know?
All over.
All over.
All
Just
over,
The
yeah.
whole mix.
had some people there from, you know, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and then did not get much farther east than Indiana or
farther
Michigan.
west, you mean?
Yeah, farther west than Indiana or Michigan. Seemed like okay.
Okay.
They go to Fort Dix, you know, others would go to, you know, Polk or, you know, wherever.
I know, I got drafted out of South Bend, and I ended up at Fort Campbell for basic.
Okay.
It was kind of interesting. So, okay, basic lasted, what, 8 weeks for you?
Yeah.
Pretty much, okay. And
9 weeks, whatever.
then you got, when did you get your orders for your advanced training while you're in basic?
It was like the last week and a half. You know, they wanted to make sure that you were, in fact, you know, going to make it through. And in between that time, I was a squad leader within basic training. So that, you know, that always worked out well. I figured as long as we're going to do it, and you know, you might as well either be in charge, partially in charge, or get the extra training.
Try to control your own destiny a little bit, huh?
Best I could. So I did a 2-week leadership class between basic and AIT, and then was, you know, again a squad leader in AIT.
Now you got, what kind of AIT did you get orders for?
And advanced infantry training.
Infantry, okay.
Yeah.
And did you do that right at Dix?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah. So I didn't have to go far.
So you did your basic training at Dix, you did a 2-week leadership training, then you went into infantry AIT at Fort Dix. Now, because of leadership training, were you then like a squad leader
Yeah.
as well in AIT?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you could, explain what AIT was involved. What all did you do? And
Where basic was showing you the weapons, showing you what a bunker was, showing you how to crawl under wire, you know, how to do the important things to stay alive. Advanced infantry training, you know, took it another step. You know, you went from the M14 to the M16. You get to play around with, you know, grenade launchers. You get to build bunker complex. You got a chance to actually tactically attack another force. And that was done so early in the year, everybody was killed. Nobody really knew what was going on. You're running around.
yeah,
You know, too many movies. So,
yeah.
but you know, that's
Okay, so you got more just advanced infantry tactics, a lot of weapons training,
Yeah.
did you have any land navigation training?
Yeah.
And map reading and that kind of thing?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. More of that. You got the basics of that. You know, it wasn't until the NCO Academy that, you know, you got the you know, heavy night. You know, it was an all-night deal for the navigation.
So now you graduate, AIT was what, 8 weeks?
Yeah.
So you graduate from AIT, then what happens to you?
Then we got you know, it was at that time, you know, you're either going to go OCS, you're going to go straight over to NOM, in which case you would then come back and still have some time to serve. You could go to the Shake and Bake Academy. And out of those choices, you know, I went with, you know, the NCO Academy.
So that's the Shake and Bake Academy.
Yeah.
Explain what for the viewing, for somebody who's viewing this later, explain what the Shake and Bake Academy was and what was its purpose.
Well,
and,
they took promising, you know, recruits and put them together, shook them up, and poured a whole lot of information in them that they would be more knowledgeable than your average, you know, basic training AIT graduate going over to, you know, help lead the troops.
So you could go, once that was completed, you could function as like a squad leader or
Yeah.
some such thing,
Yeah.
okay? So
That was the intent, you know. It sounded great, and it was great, because the guys that came out of there, you know, performed a very valuable service, you know. You know, you got the officers telling everybody what to do, but the officers aren't usually doing that. You know, there's too many things going on for the officers to be doing that with them, so you needed the sergeants to go out and do that with them. And you need to make sure that the sergeants really knew what was going on and how to properly do
So
it.
how long did that NCO Academy last for you?
It's like a 12-week course.
Which is you went through 12 weeks, and what did that all consist of?
It went anywhere. We did you know, they immersed us in the, you know, the compass and navigation, and that was, you know, heavily stressed. And, you know, we would go out and do night exercises where, you know, here's where you're supposed to go, here's your compass, and you got an hour, or you got 3 hours, whatever it is, and, you know, away you went. So that was always, that was fun, you know, just wandering around. Okay, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. And you find the post with the number on it, and then you took your new bearings and you went to the next post. You know, we would, what else? Team building exercises. You know, they've got obstacles. Had one where you've got a pond of water, and you got a pole with a log on top of it. And the idea was to get 5 people from here over to the other side. But it was too tall for one person to do, so then you had to hoist somebody up, and then you had to help everybody else get up and work your way over within a time period. You know, it was just one of the exercises. So that, you know, the team building was very important, you know, especially at the NCO Academy, because these people are going to be doing the same thing that you're trying to do, and everybody was trying to help, and it was a great way to get, you know, different ways to do the, you know, same job. You know, there were 3 or 4 different ways to go about it, and everybody, you know, all that was brought out with the folks. And then you had the individual hand-to-hand combat. The, you know,
More so than you had in basic?
Oh, yeah. You know, so that was
Now, where did the NCO Academy take place at?
Fort Benning.
Okay, so you went to Fort Benning for good.
Yeah, and you get to climb up and do the rappelling, which was, you know, a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And you got to, you know, do that out of helicopters as well.
Did you do it out of helicopters in the academy?
Got to do it once out of the helicopter. That was because we did so well jumping out of the training devices.
Okay, so after the 12 weeks of the NCO Academy, you came out, and were you then promoted?
Yep. You came out at E5, and you then became the cadre at another AIT training unit. In my case, mine was Fort Lewis, Washington.
So then you went from Benning to Fort Lewis, Washington as a sergeant doing basic training kinds of things?
Doing AIT.
AIT.
Yeah, we had
Okay.
an AIT group. You know, this way I just kept building on that advanced infantry training, the NCO Academy, and go back and teach the people what we've, you know.
Okay, I want to kind of backtrack a little bit. While you were in AIT and the NCO Academy, were your instructors and were the cadre basically Vietnam veterans?
Yes.
And did they give you any special kinds of tips or skew your knowledge one way or another, or?
Nope, it was pretty much, scare tactics.
Okay.
Yeah. You do that over there, say what,
You'll die,
Yeah,
right?
that's
Okay,
it.
okay. So you went to Fort Lewis as a cadre in the infantry AIT school for, how many cycles were you there for?
Just one.
Just one, so,
Just one.
so you were assigned to a training company for one 8-week cycle through.
And that then had me stateside for 1 year out of my 2-year enlistment. And so when I shipped over to Nam, just had to make it through that, and knowing that I would, be discharged, when I got
Okay,
out.
so at the end of that training cycle, you had you knew you probably before that you were going to Vietnam,
Oh, yeah.
right? And,
Everybody was going to
okay.
go.
So, okay, now you're going to Vietnam, and you got to Vietnam basically end of May of 1970.
April.
Or
April Fool's Day. April Fool's Day, I enlisted, and then I arrived in Vietnam February April. Yeah, at the end of May.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
had 5/29.
The end of March.
End of March.
Yeah, 31st of March.
Okay. 3/30.
Yeah.
3/31. Okay, so you go to Vietnam, and how did you get over to Vietnam?
They transported us.
I mean, did you fly,
Oh,
take
yeah.
a boat?
No, we
Okay,
flew.
Okay, so you went over as a replacement, basically.
Yeah.
Where did you land in Vietnam?
Came in down at Cam Bay,
In Cam Bay.
and then spent a night in Da Nang.
What was your first impression of Vietnam when you got off the airplane?
Smelled. It stunk. And we're coming off the plane, and the boys who've been here and finished out their tour are going on, shouting slurs and insults at us
Yeah.
as they were getting on their freedom bird.
Yeah, so you landed in Cam Bay. Now, when you had orders to go over, did you have orders for a specific unit, or
No.
do you just went over to like a replacement
That's it.
depot?
And he had no idea where I was going, and then they just kept moving you along. Cam Bay to Da Nang. Da Nang, I think I was there 2 nights, and then shipped out to Camp Evans.
Well, when you left Cameron, did you know you were going to the 101st?
No.
No idea then.
No.
So you went from Cam Bay to Da Nang,
Yeah.
and in Da Nang, did you know you were going to the 101st then? Did they give you orders?
At the end of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so now you're going to go to the 101st. Then where do you go from Da Nang to?
I went into Camp Evans, and everybody that comes in country is given or at least the NCOs. I don't recall if there were regular guys there or not. I think this is the NCOs had search training in country, training.
And what did that consist? How long was that, and what did that
It
consist
was
of?
like 4, 5, 6 days. And it was basically old cadre telling you horror stories about what was going on, and you helped man the
Perimeter for a while.
perimeter
and,
at night.
Did they have any booby trap courses that you went through, or anything like that?
They had some very basic stuff set up, but we'd already seen much of that. And you would go, and it wasn't like they were teaching us anything. It was more like a walkthrough.
Okay.
And you go through here, and this is a Vietnamese village. Here are pictures of booby traps that you may encounter. Here are animal snares that you may find out in the jungle that the population put out to catch food. But it was nothing really interactive at all.
Okay. So you did your search training for about a week or whatever, and then what happened?
At that time, the 101st had an operation going on called Ripcord.
Okay.
They were establishing the Firebase. They had started doing that in March, and it had been a very hotly contested effort. And one of the companies, Delta, had taken some casualties, so had Bravo Company. So I was initially scheduled for Bravo Company, but then Delta lost several of the NCOs through DROs or had been wounded, so my orders were changed from Bravo to Delta Company. Was delivered to Delta Company, and the top first sergeant got me scored away with a rucksack and everything. Trying to put together a 50, 60, 70 pound rucksack to go out in the field without any instructions on it except put it all on there. You're going to need everything that I just gave you.
What all did he give you?
Yeah, you got these inflatable 1 gallon bladders for water, and you got 3 or 4 of those, and a gallon of water, it's fairly heavy, and all of a sudden you got 5 of those. Wow! And you got your canteen, and you got your ammo, you got an ammo belt, you got your cleaning stuff for your rifle. They just keep giving you stuff. You got your canteen, your eating utensils, you're gonna need that. Oh, by the way, here's an ammo box you'll want to put in there. That'll be for your papers and wallet and anything.
Waterproof stuff,
yeah. Anything you wanted to keep dry. So you put all that on, and it's, when I went out to the field, chopper comes in, they're kicking off C rations and water, and I get out, take about 2 steps, and I, fall over, and you go rolling, you go, oh, Jesus, you look up, come on, Sergeant, get up.
Okay, well, now you're going as a replacement.
Yeah.
And you assigned to Delta Company. Gonna take over a squad?
At that time, we still had pretty good sized squads. So I was not a squad leader, I was an assistant squad leader. We were fortunate at that time. We still had, 8, 9, 10 people that were in a squad. That changed greatly, later on.
Yeah, we can talk about that, but I'm just kind of curious, what kind of reaction did you have, was there to your coming in? That they knew here you were a rookie, but here you're a Sergeant E5, and hey, I've been in the bush 10 months, and hey, I'm not going to listen to this guy, what kind of reception did you have?
Because of the efficiency of the company, and Captain Rawlinson was, not spit and polish, but damn sure played it,
He was a good field troop?
Oh, yes, okay. Just top of the line, and that, was passed down, and, that was apparent at every level, so. Lieutenant Flaherty was my CO for
your platoon?
My platoon, and then that was 3rd platoon, and then George Strasberg, staff sergeant, was the squad leader, and so then I was assistant squad leader, and would have 4 or 5 guys that usually were, that when they assigned an ambush for the evening, that was usually a 3 to 4 man ambush, depending how many people you had. So these were the people that I were normally with, although we were still part of the squad. So the whole, everybody's there again to help everybody. So they teach you, different things. Number one, you don't walk on the trails.
Right.
Because of the booby traps. if you don't walk on the trails, you're gonna have to cut your way through a lot of times, so then somebody's got a machete and you gotta keep that. There were usually 2 or 3 machetes. And you'd have somebody walk point, somebody slack, you know, myself, or who was ever in charge, then the radio, and you just, you know, tried to be quiet and tried to survive and make sure that you were aware of what was going on.
Okay.
So, you know, the reaction was generally positive. You know, occasionally somebody would, you know, not want to do the point thing, and I had one of my troop members that didn't think that he should walk points, and he had been there, you know, 7, 8 months, and before we got to the, you know, I order you to, we kind of reached a compromise. He said, well, why don't we wrestle for this? Okay, I used to wrestle in high school. Apparently so did he, but I was taller and, you know, still pretty quick, and we settled that real quickly, and everything was,
point, yeah.
yeah, and he still tells that story, you know, all these years later, so it was all good.
Okay. So now you joined the company, and just explain what now you're joining them, Ripcord.
We had taken
The Firebase has been set up,
Yeah. And so what you have is you have an area of operation around the Firebase that your different line companies would patrol. And they would do that to make sure that there was no enemy activity within the area. You know, Ripcord was a forward. It was, you know, almost in the Ashaw Valley. And they would fire in the Ashaw Valley. And the Ashaw Valley is the valley that, you know, separates Vietnam and Cambodia, and that was a major resupply line. I mean, like they had, you know, 4-lane highways, you know, that would go down the valley. And so by having the fire base that close, you could quickly, you know, lock in on targets and fire, especially if somebody's coordinating it. As in us seeing the activity and calling in the fire missions. So we, you know, so you got 5 companies in a within the unit.
Within the battalion.
Yeah, and so Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta, and then Echo was the recon company. So one company was on the fire base defending it. The other 4 with the recon, but they always did something different. You know, we never saw them until one time we had to go out and help bail them out because they're supposed to be very stealthy and quiet and not get caught out in the open because they don't have that many people. You know, there were snipers and scouts, things like that. So we all had an area to walk in, you know, to explore. And that's what it was. You know, you're exploring it, except, you know, in the exploration, somebody may shoot at you, or you'll come across their house, which is a bunker complex, and, you know, try to hurt you. And that's what it was, is just exploring. So, but the thing is, you're exploring in the mountains, and you walk up 1,000 feet with 40, 50, 60 pounds on your back, and then you walk down that, you know, and so some days you would cover, you know, 1,200-1,500 meters.
As the crow flies, but you probably walk 5,000 meters up and down, right? Yeah.
You know, it was long days, and the thing, especially with Rawlinson, is that you never stayed in the NDP, the night defensive position, more than one night.
Right.
Gives them the opportunity to locate you, come in, you know, cause you bodily harm. And so we didn't. And it was, so you get out early in the morning, you're up and moving, 7:30, heading to a new place. And then you get there and you send patrols out. And those patrols are gone for 2-3 hours. So theoretically, they're supposed to make sure there's nothing in the immediate area of the night defensive position.
Would each patrol be in radio contact with
Yeah.
you?
Yeah. they'd be in contact with the command
company
post.
CP, yeah.
Yeah, the command post of the platoon. And then they would in turn be,
Okay.
now they could monitor that, and, that's why the headquarters CP had had 2-3 different radios, so they were monitoring it, but we didn't contact them directly. And so that's, here you come, you got 80, 100 guys if you're, we'd love to have that many. You come up, and then you start sending out, the different groups. And then sometimes we'd break off in platoons, and you go out for a day or two, then you come back. So, we were covering a pretty good area.
What kinds of things would you stumble upon?
Bunker complexes.
If you found a bunker complex, what would you do with it?
Well, hopefully nobody was shooting at you from it.
Right.
And then if that was the case, you would, try to take a look for any trail signs of which way they may have gone or come in. And then these people could build very sturdy things out of very little. They dig down and they have some of the trees chopped or limbs chopped, and they would make these bunkers that would withstand some of the bombs we would drop or some of the artillery shells. So it was, we never carried enough ammunition, explosives to actually destroy one of those. What we would do is we'd take some CS canisters and explode those in each of the bunkers, so that if they did come back, it was very uncomfortable, to be in there, and that would theoretically, deny them the use of it. One time we came across a 500-pound bomb that we had dropped that had not exploded. And we were wandering down, all of a sudden, there's the bomb, and you're going, okay, is this booby-trapped? Did they find it first, and they've booby-trapped it, and they're just sitting there waiting for us to come by? So we went around and did different things where we, were comfortable with the fact they had not found it. But then we found little snares that they had set up for animals, to catch something. So we knew it was going to happen. They were going to find it quickly, or they were going to booby trap it quickly. So we got back, and we had another team come in, and they destroyed that 2 days later.
Okay. Now, when you'd find these vacant bunker complexes, and obviously you put some CS in there, and be kind of persistent where there's not much ventilation, obviously, so it would last for a period of time. Would you mark the coordinates, and then,
yes.
and then later
And they were
shoot
called back
maybe artillery H&I rounds or something on them?
Occasionally, just but that was,
Yeah.
and they were built to withstand that.
Mm-hmm.
So barring a direct hit, it wasn't going to do much. Now you could do that, to harass them, just to, hey, did you go back there? Here, try these out, But, but they theoretically.
So rarely would you bring in engineers to blow the whole thing, right?
No, it was too much going on. The engineers were to keep the fire base up and going, and that Ripcord wasn't the only fire base that was going on at the time. There was a lot going on for the amount of people we had.
So as the operation went on, it got a lot testier.
Oh yeah. It, as I understand it, and the numbers are, somewhat open to interpretation, but it was, it was almost, it was pretty much a 10-to-1 ratio. They had about 10,000 NVA soldiers, and we roughly had 1,000 that were directly involved in trying to hold on to Ripcord. And obviously, it didn't go very well. The helicopters, the gunners, they all did, tremendous jobs, but it was just physically impossible to hang on to it.
Yeah, you didn't have the strength.
No, And then, you know, because it was so far in, you know, as we were getting toward the end, it would be socked in. You know, you would have the clouds and you couldn't see it. So
A lot of times you'd be above the clouds too, right?
yeah. So it made it difficult to keep it open. Plus, the resupply was by helicopter. Once you get a mortar mortar tube set up in the position, and you just kind of crank it around till all of a sudden you can throw a mortar round at, you know, the north landing pad, the south landing pad. You know, you can figure out where they are, and you just wait for somebody to come in, and you drop it, and there it goes. So that was, you know, ultimately what happened to Ripcord. You know, supply ships get shot down, Chinooks. You know, they knock out a battery of the 150, 105.
105s, yeah.
And so it was just a terrible way to do it. We were out in the field for you know, such an extended period. I mean, from the time I got there, you know, mid-April, May, June, July, we had not been to the rear as a company during that entire time. And that's a lot of time that you're out in the bush. You know, you know, you had your one pair of clothes, and well, a couple of guys, you know, kept another pair, but you know, and you're filthy, and you try to, you know, in the rivers you try to clean up and keep the hygiene up, and it was tough to do, especially if they were bringing you out your water, because you didn't always get down to the river, you know, to get fresh supply, you know, fresh water. So we just kept going around and around. There was a lot of, I for one ended up getting worms that had burrowed through the skin of my legs, and both legs were all pussy. So when it was our turn to go up to the Firebase and, you know, take our 2 to 3 weeks up there and kind of lick our wounds and, you know, get things pulled together, I ended up going to the medic, and the medic said, "You're going to the rear." And I went to the rear and was in the hospital for, you know, like 10 days. You know, another one of our guys, you know, was feverish, and you know, they thought it might be malaria, but it turned out not to be. So, you know, there's just all kinds of.
So what kind of treatment did you have to go through to get rid of those worms?
Well, they gave me, and I tried to find out, you know, to, you know, get my records.
Yeah.
My records do not indicate that I was in the hospital.
Okay.
You know, so, you know, anybody trying to file a claim for, you know, Agent Orange or anything, you know, if you thought you got something over there, you know, it's not going to happen.
Well, a lot of the claims they're presumptive now. If you were over there and you got XYZ diagnosis, they say, well, it's related.
Yeah, but yeah, Agent Orange and bladder cancer is not one of them. So you know, some medicine I, you know, had to wash with 4 times a day, and they were giving me pills, and whatever those pills were. I mean, it wasn't painful, but it was just oozy and messy.
Probably some kind of antibiotic or something, I would imagine.
Yeah.
So, okay, you were in the hospital for 10 days?
Yeah.
So did you miss, that was when you came in, that was in July, did you miss the Hill 1000?
I did.
Okay, so
Yeah.
you weren't there for that.
Thank God.
Yeah.
But, you know, my best friend and one of my squad leaders, Mike Grimm, was killed there. Okay. So Staff Sergeant Jerry Pounds visited me in the hospital to tell me that Michael had been killed. And I, you know, came back up shortly after that. I got back to the company the late afternoon of the first attempt to go in and rescue Alpha Company that they did not get to.
Second of the 506, Alpha?
Yeah,
Okay.
we went in to rescue Alpha, but they couldn't do it because it either got too dark too quick or the LZ was on fire, but they couldn't do it. So we went out again the following morning, but I had rejoined the company by then. So I was on the first bird. I took my squad, my gun team. Dave Faber was my gunner, Ron Virgilio, Carl Adams was my RTO, and one other person, I think his last name was Trulock. He was a black man, and I don't remember his first name. So we went out at first light. I mean, you know, these poor bastards had been under attack for like, 3 days, and 80% of them were wounded, and they were in bad shape. So if we didn't get to them, it wasn't going to happen. So we went in, and as you're coming in on a helicopter, that's the bird's most vulnerable as it's coming down. That's called during the short final. Well, during the short final, the Cobras are just tearing up the LZ. Ooh, I hadn't seen that before. I mean, and they're just rocking it. Now, let me jump back to when the medic sent me off of Ripcord. It was so quick, there's a ship here going back, get on the ship. Well, I got to I'll take care of it and tell everybody. Well, didn't have my rucksack, didn't have my personal box or anything. So when I came back out to the company, obviously they didn't have it either, it was somewhere. So,
did you ever find it?
No,
Yeah,
no. So when I got on the bird with my squad, I didn't have any smoke. And first bird in, you pop red if it's hot, green if it's not. So I borrowed a red smoke from the door gunner, and I had a green from one of my buddies. So we come in, we get out, my radio, RTO and I on the right side, Virgilio, Faber, Trulock on the other side, and you hear this, Sergeant! Shit. So I yell at Carl, said, call it in as hot. I grabbed the ammo, headed across the LZ, popped the red, gave the ammo to the machine gunner, and I'm looking like, what's wrong? He goes there. So from 15, 20 feet away is a bunker with the 51 caliber in it. And that's what the Cobras had been
shooting at, huh?
Yeah. So in the process of taking the bunker, and I threw a grenade, he threw a grenade. I got him, he got me, spun me around in the air 1.5 times. And all of a sudden, the right leg is numb. I can't feel it or anything. So that's when everybody else comes in. Rawlinson said, Sergeant Skinner, let's go. He said, I can't, the leg is not working. Okay, and away they went. And that was that was my part in the rescue of Alpha Company.
Okay. And then you were medevaced out then?
Yeah,
Okay.
same bird that brought me in.
Okay. So how long were you hospitalized then?
Overnight. It was
Oh.
2 pieces of shrapnel
Okay.
that if your scrotum hangs down normally, you would not see where the shrapnel went in. It
Yeah.
sucked right up there,
Yeah.
and so and that was it. I was up,
So then did you rejoin the unit the next day, or?
Yeah, that's when they had shut down Ripcord.
Okay.
That they had started shutting that down before
Okay.
and before we went out to get them. Everybody knew that was what was happening. They just needed to make sure we got them out.
So then Ripcord was basically shut down, and
Yep.
then where did you guys operate then?
We came back for, we had a stand down for 5-6 days. But you bring all those combat troops, and you put them in a group there, and And
Oh, yeah.
it gets a little rough, And yeah, after about the third day, we started having isolated fights here and there, and then it was a little bit of the black and white fighting. So we quickly got orders to go back out in the field, and this was up around Firebase Marine or Catherine. Had so many of those fire bases that the different ones.
Was this in the hills as well? Or?
Yeah, it was in the hills, but not nearly as far in.
Okay.
And then this is, during the weather that, things are starting to turn, a little cooler. It's not the monsoons, and it's not cold yet, but you knew that was coming. And we did the same thing, patrol around, and
Was it a pretty quiet sector though?
it was a lot quieter than Ripcord. It was like Ripcord was here, so then we moved over here.
Right.
Ripcord was like 35, 38 miles east away. And so Marine was, almost,
About
half
halfway?
that distance,
Yeah, okay.
east of Camp Evans. Yeah, it was a lot closer, and there was actually a
Right,
road.
East, west of Camp Evans. East being the beach. Camp Evans.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah.
I spent on and off about 6 months on the beach over there.
Uh-huh.
I know the terrain.
Yeah.
But, okay, so then you finished your tour that way?
We ended up having a new captain and a new lieutenant. I went on R&R in Sydney on October 10th, 12th. Got my 22nd birthday there. Came back out in the field. Rawlinson was still there, and the general was there as well as the colonel that time. And it was shortly after that Rawlinson, left.
Okay.
And we got a new company commander that was not Rawlinson, and he wasn't particularly good. Couldn't read a map very well. So I had was able to finagle a job in the rear.
Oh, you did? You were?
Yeah, about mid-June,
Okay.
and I was able to come out of the field and spend my final few months in the rear.
So what were you doing in the rear?
I was with S5. We would go out to the local villages, take the doctors out there, treat the kids.
Basically just to secure them? You were
Yeah.
You were a security detachment for them, just in case?
But we never went to very far. We never went to a village that we actually expected to,
Right.
be hostile. So, there were 2 or 3 of us that would go out with, with the doctors, but, never had any problem.
What did you think of the Vietnamese population? That's probably the first time you got to react with the
Yeah.
Vietnamese population.
I mean, they were just like us. They just spoke funny,
They just wanted to be left alone, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, so.
So you spent the rest of your tour doing that?
Mhm.
Okay. And then you came back,
Came back, got out.
okay, now you came back, you went back through Cameron Bay again? Or did you have to go down to Saigon or Benoit?
Where did we do it? I think it was Da Nang.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think I got back down there. Yeah, I was. it went down there once with once you come back to the rear, you then and go to S5. I then became part of the headquarters company.
Yeah.
And so another sergeant and I ended up having taken an occasional prisoner down to Long Binh.
Okay.
Then we managed to finagle an extra night or two
Oh, sure.
in the town. So that was always.
Always got bumped on transportation, huh? Yeah.
That was interesting, and you were okay for a couple of days after that, and top would put you out on the line, with guard duty for more days in a row than what you should, so you would know that you had screwed up. So, Yeah, so
So you came back to the States and,
back to Richmond, Indiana, and it
and
was
you got out, you discharged right away then, right?
Yep.
Okay.
and my hometown was a very small hometown after I came back. And so within 10 days, I had gotten a job in Indianapolis with a friend of mine collecting bills for AFCO Financial.
A good job for an ex-infantryman.
Yeah, that was, I mean, I had no idea what I wanted to do or what I was going to be or.
Did you go back to school
I,
at all?
I did for a year and a half, and I never did get my degree.
Okay.
I had, back in, I think it's like 74, 75, Indiana repealed some of their archaic liquor laws. And we then allowed women to sit at the bar. And you were able to take your drink from one table to another. Prior to that, a waitress or waiter had to do that, and women couldn't sit at, I mean, you weren't a lady if you sat at the bar, and so they didn't let it. So then that passed, and I went to work at the first singles bar in Indianapolis. And that was the start of my 35-year career in the adult beverage business.
Okay. Great.
So I retired from 4 years ago.
Oh, great. Well, it's a very interesting story. Thank you very much. I'm gonna shut this off. Yeah. I spent